Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building a Safer Future with Cloud Security and Leading Security Providers. I'm joined here with three leading security providers that I'll introduce after I provide a brief overview of our overall security ecosystem and lay the foundation for the conversation we're going to have with this awesome panel. As it relates to the history of innovation, Google is very proud of our innovations. In fact, we built the foundation of ultimately what is the application infrastructure of the internet. And we've leveraged that overall application infrastructure to build what we believe to be a superior infrastructure that we all know today is Google Cloud. And so when we look at Google Cloud, there's some core principles that all of you really know as fundamental elements of cloud security, whether that's a shared fate model, and we'll talk more detail about that, or purpose-built hardware, which of course, with all of the different innovations around AI is getting a lot of notoriety. And then of course, key technologies like Kubernetes that are foundational for what Google Cloud has built and a lot of other clouds have ultimately built. But then there's other technologies that we were foundational around, such as BeyondCorp. BeyondCorp and that infamous white paper that we created several years back became the foundation of what we now know today is Zero Trust. And so these innovations, of course, are foundationally built on the fact that we support 3 billion users globally. And so by supporting those users, we're in a position to understand the security needs of each of you as customers. But what's critically important is that we've literally built the foundation of Google Cloud from the ground up, leveraging core security principles that we believe are significantly differentiated from each of other cloud service providers. And we're going to dive into some of those key principles in this conversation. And one of those, first and foremost, really starts with the foundation of trust. Just like each of you as customers, as we would expect with Google Cloud to have in any relationship that we all establish, trust becomes that foundation. And built on top of that is ultimately innovation. We all know how evolving the security threat landscape is, how quickly vulnerabilities come out, how those vulnerabilities and threats can be realized. And it's very important that we have innovation in regards to being able to build components that deal ultimately with those overall threats. And then the third layer of the overall foundation is all about partnerships. We all know that Google Cloud itself, even with all the cool innovations that we ultimately build, we cannot do this alone, and we have to work with key ecosystem partners to be able to build overall controls that ultimately address this overall evolving threat landscape. And so, as we start to pull the onion back and we peel the onion back and we start to look at some of these core elements of why you would trust Google Cloud, the first one is that each of you as a customer ultimately owns your own data on Google Cloud. And then if we start to look at other elements such as streamlining your network, we have what we believe, and we're going to drill into this, a superior network where you are able to ultimately roll out specific regions in a much more simplified way with a greater amount of use or user experience and ease of use. And then your apps and data are available when you need them. What's critically important is Google Cloud has been built on the same foundation that we deploy all of the other applications that have been built on Google since the inception of Google as a company. And then satisfying those key compliance and regulatory requirements that each of you have, whether that's in the EU or whether that's in the US or whether that's in APAC, it's critically important that we are in a position to be able to have those overall extensive audits, the compliance and governance that address each of your core security requirements. And then of course, we also expand beyond that, and we are fundamentally want to ensure that we're doing things that ultimately have a positive impact on the footprint of the planet. And so when it comes down to it, today we're already running on carbon-free energy, and by 2030, we expect to be running on overall carbon-free energy in all of our overall data centers. And then of course, you can't be in any presentation where there's not somebody sitting there clicking and trying to count how many times we say AI. But what's really critically important is that we can talk about how that AI is ultimately helping the overall security ecosystem. And we'll dive into some of those LLMs or PaLM 2 or even SecPaLM 2 and how some of our key customers have made decisions and ultimately partners have made decisions to be able to incorporate that within their overall infrastructure to be able to provide differentiated security solutions for each of our customers. And then built on top of all of that foundational layer of trust becomes innovation. And those innovations are all about the core technologies that we build in Google Cloud that ultimately were traditionally built in the data center. And the first one of those is Data Cloud. And many of our security core companies built a lot of their technologies, which we'll drill into, around what does Data Cloud provide? It provides the ability for all of you to actually look at the entire data lifecycle, from data lakes to data warehouses to business intelligence to analytics that enable each of you to leverage those core technologies to be able to optimize security configurations and ultimately provide a stronger security posture. And then when we think of open cloud, I've already talked about Kubernetes. We know that's a key technology, but Google Cloud is different than the other cloud service providers and we actually recognize that they exist. And as a result of that, we built key technologies such as Anthos that ultimately supports multi-cloud environments because we know every one of you as customers are most likely using all of the clouds for different types of applications and services. And we want to ensure that we're creating innovations that incorporate within those structures that you guys have. And then when we look at Trusted Cloud is an intrinsic capability that's built into the fabric of course, our security ecosystem. But over the last couple of years, we've really enhanced that through stuff like Mandiant Threat Intelligence. That is by far some of the best threat intelligence on the planet, but we're incorporating that within our core products, such as SecPaLM 2 and other technologies that enable us, of course, to be able to create and co-innovate with our partners and create better solutions, but also ultimately provide you the threat intelligence that's necessary for the evolving threat landscape. And then Collaboration Cloud that's built on the foundation of what is Workspace and making sure that all of those core applications that if you are using those with Workspace, that you are able to incorporate security technologies that ultimately meet the demand of what is necessary for each of those particular applications. And then as we build on that foundation of trust, along with the innovations, we bring together a strong security ecosystem partnership that helps us ultimately deliver what we believe to be very unique value. First and foremost, we find Google Cloud to be a very eager partner to work with other leading partners, such as the individuals that are on the stage with me, to be able to provide very unique security solutions. And then those leading capabilities, we leverage with areas such as our unique user experience, analytics to be able to provide very unique customer experiences to our customers. And then when I talk about that co-innovation, when it comes down to first-party security technologies that we build, in many instances, we also still work with key partners to build under the hood, such as our intrusion detection systems, our intrusion prevention, such as Firewall Plus that we just announced at this conference, to be able to provide you technologies that are leveraging the very best of security that exists out there and not just what we believe we should be providing you to monetize. And then, of course, all of you, if you truly are going to trust Google Cloud, ultimately, we need to ensure that we have the robust set of security technologies across our security software vendors, such as CNAPP, or whether that happens to be governance, risk, and compliance, or logging, or secure enclaves. And so I'm really excited to be able to now transition to the panel to really talk about how this trust, innovation, and partnerships comes together, to really be able to provide unique value propositions. But first and foremost, even though we are talking about partners with Google Trust, what's critically important is every one of the individuals on stage here with me is first and foremost a customer. Just like each of you, they had to create criteria and ultimately drill into that criteria to identify who is the best cloud provider. And so we're really going to explore with each of our panelists why they chose Google Cloud, what is differentiated about Google Cloud, and drill into some of the key concepts that we've already set the foundation for today. So I'm going to kick off the panel with passing it over to Chris so he can provide an overall introduction, and then a little bit of background as well on why they chose Google Cloud. So first, I'll start with you, Chris.
Thanks, Preston. Hi, guys. I'm Chris Lahiri. I'm one of the co-founders and Chief Security Officer of Ignite. Ignite's a data collaboration and a data governance platform for all of business critical data. So I threw in a lot of words there, but at the end of the day, all our customers, we've got about 20,000, 22,000 businesses that trust and run on Ignite. And they use Ignite to protect and manage a lot of their unstructured Office docs and other types of data. In turn, Ignite, the platform, runs on Google Cloud. And so a lot of the things that Preston was referring to earlier are either delegated or we build on those capabilities. So there's a lot of let's call it dependency. There's a shared responsibility between Google Cloud as an infrastructure provider as well as the type of things that we build. At the end of the day, the customer isn't really bothered about who has what layer of responsibility. It's up to us to present it and make it easy for them. So that's a quick introduction.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Over to you, Jeannie.
I'm Jeannie. I work for Exabeam. We started out life in 2013 as a UBA before even Gartner says they invented UEBA business, but we all know better. We expanded about 2.5 years ago from being a UBA that was local on people's environment to something that was going to be in the cloud. We wanted to go SaaS. We wanted it to go open, and frankly, we wanted better volumes. So we've been talking with Google for about 2.5 years now and working with them on saying, what will it take to get people to move from their local environment to the cloud, which for many of you who may be in the middle of this, there is a lot involved with that. There's the security of it. Suddenly the control isn't a machine in somebody's closet. Sometimes they need to trust somebody else. And we made a choice very carefully to go with Google in that way. We liked their availability, but more importantly was their scope, because at the same time that we were expanding from just plain UEBA into SIEM and SOAR spaces so that we could do all three within one SaaS service, we needed something that could take data from 500 different 500 different products from 300 different vendors and bring that all in together into one place to look at massive big data. And so we liked BigQuery for that. We also have a history of working with pattern matching and machine learning and the AI, and we like where you guys are going with that as well. So it made perfect sense for us to partner up with Google and continue on our path together.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah, and so I'm Matt McClimans. I'm a technical engagement director at Palo Alto Networks, and my job, I get to work with a lot of our joint customers on building scalable and secure architectures in Google Cloud. But the other big part of my job is I get to work with Preston, and I get to work across our partnership team within Google to develop joint integrations that we're making with Google Cloud. So you mentioned a couple already. So it's a great spot to be in because things are constantly changing. We're also constantly innovating to actually help our joint customers. But to get to your question on why we chose Google Cloud as our cloud provider, there's a lot of reasons, but I think it ties back to how the Google network constructs are designed and built. So at Palo Alto Networks, we host the world's largest threat intelligence database. And that threat intelligence database is what feeds all of our cloud-delivered security services for all of our customers around the globe. So it plays a critically important part in our business model, but also in the overall security of how we actually secure our customers and how governments use our products. So it's something that's critically important to us.
Thank you, Matt. And Matt, sticking with you for a second, we started to drill into the simplified network configuration. I know you and I have had a lot of dialogue around this, but can you expand and articulate to the audience and to our customers here about some of those key differentiators that you found in that simplification that are unique to Google Cloud?
Yeah, so something that's overlooked, and it just this is a personal perception, just talking with a lot of different customers out there, is that in Google Cloud, something that's very unique is how you can create a single network that spans the entire globe. meaning you can have subnetworks in North America, Australia, Europe, and since they're all part of the same network, they share the same type of common firewall rules. They share the same networking infrastructure, so all your routing is the same and is shared across all of them. Versus when you look at how other CSPs do it, it's more of a copy and paste over and over and over again to actually have that same type of global footprint. So by having that single network, you have lower costs from an operational standpoint. You also have lower costs on the total number of compute that you actually have to run. So that's something that I always try to emphasize, that's with customers, that, hey, you can have this type of global footprint very quickly in Google that's also easy to manage and easy to operationalize.
Thank you, Matt. And then Chris, coming back over to you, and a similar question to Matt. I know you've talked a lot about the uniqueness of Google Cloud and having a secure file sharing and secure enclaves. Can you talk about some of the unique characteristics that exist in Google Cloud that led to some of those decisions to ultimately build your infrastructure and that technology with Google?
Yeah, our history with Google Cloud goes back to the early days of cloud, like almost 2012 when Google Cloud first released. That's when we started to do stuff. And as you would imagine, storage and compute were equivalent. I would say it's grown a lot, and we'll get into that later. But those weren't the first most interesting things about why we ended up picking Google and actually building more from there. Like I mentioned, our 20,000 plus customers are worldwide, and many times latency and the ability for someone in Australia or whatever, some far-flung part of the world, to get access to be able to work on the file was super critical. And what really blew my mind first, even back then in 2011 and 12, was Google's networking. And obviously, as you can imagine, we had tried it out on all the other vendors, including ours. We used to run pretty complex networks while we were serving customers from our data center. But what Google's sort of ubiquitous networking with, there's a lot of press about how much dark fiber they owned and all of that. But I think Google Cloud got that out to their customers very early on. And that networking, let's call it superiority from all the other tests that we were doing, was the first thing that drew us to Ignite. Drew Ignite to Google Cloud. And since then, it's grown quite a bit. I mean, there's been a lot of innovation in each of these tiers which we've adopted.
Thank you, Chris. And Jeannie, sticking with that same theme, clearly we've talked a lot about like BigQuery, refactoring your entire application, going from having, the old school ways of dealing with product management and going to each individual technology. And now you have an entire customer footprint that you can run, BigQuery across in analytics. Can you dive into some of those, that not only BigQuery and to set up some of your answer, but also other areas that you guys have really been able to leverage to differentiate your technology?
I can say from the ground up there's advantages, and we're not grave dancing, but some of us do remember last December when AWS was out from Brazil to Canada for 9 hours. Google has not done that to me. The biggest thing is that our customers come in. We have customers that use Ignite, and we have customers that use Palo Alto Networks, and we have customers that use Citrix and Juniper. And we needed to be able to take a fire hose worth of data in without any latency, without dropping, without any failures, without any problems. And we stacked you up. We looked at everybody. We looked at IBM, we looked at Azure, we looked at AWS, and Google was the only one that could handle data at the scale that we needed to handle it. Secondly, we do love the ability of the BigQuery at the back end because we use it not only for things like to find anomalies. We have a lot of patents on machine learning to dig out. We just added a new one that says, I want to know that if somebody has a Palo Alto service, and there's one piece of that Palo Alto service that suddenly has a dip in the amount. It's still connected, but it's less coming through. The science of normal, Google has been able to meet us halfway to measure that on everything. So that years ago, I used to run security operations centers, and sometimes we only knew something went down by the absence. Now we can know that something is wrong by just volume and volumetrically checking. So using the machine learning built into that and using the BigQuery off of it, I can now see something weird might be happening if I'm getting less events from Palo Alto than I expect.
Thank you. Now I'm pivoting a little bit to the term that is clearly, if there was a cloud word, it would like dominate 98% of the cloud word, is AI. You know, let's drill into that a little bit and just your thoughts on AI, you know, Jeannie, in general, but also, you know, as we look at Palm 2 and as we look at the capabilities we're building and to really tail off of BigQuery and analytics, which become foundational, you know, as we were talking before on LLMs and how we really truly optimize, you know, what AI can provide. Can you drill in a little bit there on how you're exploring those capabilities with Google Cloud and the potential?
Absolutely. We're very interested in the SecPalm 2 because finding a good LLM useful for the security space is tricky. As we all know, it's like you have Mandiants that has a certain amount that you're digging from. But the SecPalm 2 at least has limitations on what they look at. It's not just open to anybody at the internet. If you went out to ChatGPT and you said something like, is Mimikatz bad? Yes, there is a human being out there that made a Mimikat so you can generate cat memes because that person is a jerk. I don't need that in a SOC. So I like the fact that we can rely upon the SecPalm 2 as being more curated in a data that we can look at. As we look at OSINT, we deal with ZeroFox, we deal with a lot of other vendors. But we like to be able to pull it all together neatly and safely and give our customers something that each of their individual roles can rely upon.
Great, thank you. And Matt, can we drill in a little bit and kind of your thoughts on, you know, not just SecPalm 2, but also Palm 2 and just that core elemental foundation of what Gen AI and the potential that we have, you know, in our partnership, but ultimately you as a customer.
Yeah, I mean, it's the future of cloud and also the future of network security, because the way we view it is that adversaries are going to be using AI to try and infiltrate organizations and get data out. We're already implementing AI into a lot of our platforms by working with Google directly. And going back to kind of the question that was asked in the beginning, you know, why did we select Google? And that's not a decision that I don't think any of our organizations took lightly. I mean, there was a lot of research that went into it. And it's because of the platforms that Google is constantly coming out with. So on the AI front, we've developed a new module within Google that allows us to auto-provide recommendations for all of our customers on how to actually improve their security posture through their existing configuration. And that's only really done not by just taking a snapshot at one point in time, but it's done by taking heuristics of data from months or even years of what that specific endpoint or specific firewall has seen to provide that recommendation and why they should put it in. So that's just kind of the beginning. We've been using a lot of stuff with Google on how we actually determine what a threat is by putting it into our zero-day sandboxing services. So it's something that we've really embraced working with Google over the last, 5 years together? Yeah.
Your sandboxes are lovely.
Thanks, Matt. And Chris, I'm sure you're going to want to have a little airtime on addressing the AI question. So before we pivot over to drilling into some, you know, compliance, you want to expand a little bit on just Ignite and your view on Google Cloud and AI capabilities?
Yeah, I'm not going to say more about the SecPalm part. I think both Matt and Jeannie kind of covered the core parts of it. But what I was really excited, even in this conference, right from the keynote to some of the other sessions, is overall Google Cloud's, how it's embracing how to bring AI to customers. And what I really like about it is, you know, what you can do with Vertex AI, the other models that you can run with. And the reason why that's exciting for us and in Ignite is, yes, there are the LLMs, the standard ones that you could use from just Palm 2, but based on how our customer base is in different verticals, we feel we can create vertical-specific AI. These are models that understand, let's say, you know, architecture, engineering, construction. AEC is a vertical that, you know, we have lots of customers in. financial verticals. And so for these verticals, a model or an LLM that is more suitable to that user base opens up all kinds of probabilities that we are just now starting to explore. We're also working pretty closely with Google AI's team to, try out a few use cases and see how this works in the real world. So it's very exciting, but I would not say that we know what's going to come out of it. I think we are in such early stages that we can just hope to do it the right way. The responsible AI part of it, which again, all the Google folks have mentioned so many times about how your data is your data. All those core parts of how Google is providing this to us is super critical for how we turn around and then provide that capability to our customers. So,
well, and you drilled in and you mentioned AEC, and clearly you guys also are deep into life sciences and industries in general. And as we know, industries require different levels of compliance and governance. If we can pivot there and just kind of to drill in, can you expand on, how Google works with Ignite to ultimately ensure that, that doesn't have to be a big concern of yours, and that you can address those overall concerns for not only you, but of course your customers?
Yeah, sure. As a CISO, and I'm pretty sure all CISOs in the audience end up having to do something related to compliance. And we have a saying in Ignite that there is nobody that is in an unregulated industry. You may think you are, you feel like, I don't really need to do or adhere to any regulations, until you realize very quickly that there's always some board, there is some standard that you are required to, at least have baseline documentation and all of that, right? So for an ISV like us, we started out doing the standard ISO and SOC 2 audits and trying to do this on a yearly basis. Soon we moved into FedRAMP, which is a completely different beast, but it does, at the end of the day, show you what ISV or a CSP, as the FedRAMP world calls us, what our responsibilities are. And a lot of it, I would say almost 15 to 20% of these controls end up being delegated to your cloud provider. And in there, working with someone like Google that partners with you, that provides you all of the documentation you need. And from Google, of course, you get all the regular, the SOC 1, 2, 3 audits. We even got a lot of help on the FedRAMP side with the NIST certifications and all of that, right? So that partnership is super critical for us to go run our audits, which is what we then present to our customers to demonstrate to them on why they can trust this environment, platform, whatever it is. So it's a multi-layered cake for sure, and building that relationship, making sure you get the feedback, you get the appropriate documentation, collateral, all of that is super critical.
Thank you. Yeah, I was having a really good conversation the other day with Bard and their understanding of 27001 ISO, and I wanted to expand on just in 27,000, and now the family, of course, is not just 27,001 anymore. But Jeannie, you and I have had conversations in the past about joining Google Cloud and how this has really helped your business and accelerate in these areas, and would love for you to expand on the topic.
Well, I can say that we got our 2718, 2017 as well this year, which we had never done before. We'd done the 2701, of course. We did our SOC 2 Type 2 every year, but it goes faster. I think that's the best thing. Our Drew was wandering the floor yesterday and said, so how did it? When they asked me this question, he's like, it made it faster and so much easier, because you do have the documentation there, which is what people need. And people come and use their SIM and different pieces for their own compliance off of that as well. And some of what we can build on Google and visualize on Google looking like Looker and other back-end tools that are embedded within our tool, make it easy to see compliance. They make it easy to see, I just need a list of everything. Did it succeed? Did it fail? Give me a list of all the failures. Give me a list of all of this. It's faster. and it's faster to pull, and it's faster to generate, it's faster to send out, and it makes our life easier, and I presume it's going to start making our customers' life easier too.
Thank you. And then I'll pose the same question to you, Matt, and then I'd love to get kind of a secondary question in there. First is, how is it helping some of those compliance requirements, but then also expanding, knowing that Palo Alto is also an OEM partner, and under the hood, I would love to connect that conversation from compliance to how that's really supporting your overall joint customers.
Yeah, and I think Chris brought up a good point on that compliance applies to everyone. Sure, there are different compliance standards depending on industry. And to tie it back to the partnership of what we're doing with Google, so over the years, we've completed probably north of 50 integrations with Google Cloud, some big, some small, by really just talking with customers and trying to solve their specific use cases. So for example, we've done some smaller ones where we've done things like integrate Cortex XDR, which is our advanced endpoint agent, with Google Cloud BeyondCorp to really just facilitate zero trust between the endpoint and cloud applications. Or we've done really deep integrations that have taken months, if not even over a course of a year or two to develop, like which we just announced yesterday with Firewall Plus, where we're combining the simplicity and scale that you get with any native Google Cloud service, but it's backed by or powered by our threat detection and prevention technologies. So to tie this back to compliance, to deploy any type of network firewall inside of Google Cloud or any cloud environment, or even in a physical data center, requires conversations with your network infrastructure team, your security team, of course, database teams, cloud teams. So it's not a decision that's easy to make, and it takes time. So the whole point of Firewall Plus is to give customers instant threat prevention capabilities without having to have those long design decision conversations. So I think that's something that's going to address a lot of key compliance issues for a lot of our customers.
Awesome, thank you. And I think I've asked enough questions of the panel, and I'd really like to reach out to each of you in the audience. And the first thing I'd ask is, as it relates to, just please step up to the microphone, but would love to see if there are any questions in the audience for any of our panelists.
No security question too weird.
Don't be shy. All right, if there aren't any questions, let's go ahead and spend the last few minutes of just doing closing remarks. We'll start with you, Matt, and then we'll just come back this way through Jeannie and Chris, and would love to just hear you, your closing remarks on once again, that Google Cloud as a customer, but ultimately how those customer decisions have led to what is a phenomenal partnership. And I'd, of course, like to thank each of you for spending the time up here with me and preparation for this.
Thanks for having us. I'll keep it short. So from a partnership perspective, and this is also how we benefit our customers and how we benefit as a customer of Google Cloud. By focusing on what our joint customers need, we're able to develop solutions that, one, allow customers to go towards zero trust, which is a big conversation point around security, and also how they ultimately securely adopt cloud. I'm looking forward to what's coming next. I think a lot of the things that we've built and have announced during this week are just kind of the beginning of where the partnership is going to go. So a lot of good stuff to come.
Thanks, Matt. Jeannie?
I kind of wanted to throw out something reassuring here. AI has been around for a very long time. The first chatbots came out in the 60s for psychotherapy assistance. We started seeing Alexa, we saw Big Blue, we saw IBM BibBlue beat Gary Kasparov in the 90s and beat everybody, Watson beat everybody in Jeopardy. It's not new. It's not as big and hype as ChatGPT wanted it to be. Bard, however, is much cooler if you dig it in there. There's nobody's job that is going to be replaced by AI. What I think we all have hopes that it's going to do is make people's jobs easier, as to save processes, as to help new people come into the security space more quickly. That's why we're working with the R&D department at Google to say, if we have a role, if I have somebody that is a strategically shaped high school student, can I turn them into a SOC operator with the right explanations, with the right prompts, so that they understand, hey, you've asked me this, did you mean to ask me this, or something more like this, to make it easier, so that not that they can ever be replaced, because humans can't be replaced, but so that they understand what are the limits and what can really be known about what is out there. For all those of you that have interns, encourage them and teach them how to Google. It's a verb now, teach them how to Google. And those language clusters have already been there, so please be reassured that we in the security are all working together on common information models, on artificial learning models, and how we can talk to the machines clearly and build the back-end algorithms that support that language.
Chris?
I'd kind of want to call back to what Preston showed in those 3 layers of trust, innovation, and partnerships in how we think of Google, and also just in general of how we build out our solutions for our customers, right? So at the very core is a certain trust that needs to be built and this is happening from the core of our architecture, infrastructure, choosing a cloud vendor, making sure like the baseline block and tackle things of security best practices is handled properly, right? So that's at the very core. It doesn't matter what you build on top of it, but that's super important. The innovation, that's what we are. We are in Silicon Valley. I think anybody who's out here, you're constantly innovating. The last 6 months has all been about Gen AI, but 2 years before that was other innovation, whether it's machine learning or other digital transformation and cloud scale availability and things like that. So that's where, again, it's really important to have a partner that's partnering with you in this innovation, which is what we talked about on the Gen AI side. And for Ignite in particular, just because of our international presence, there is a lot, and if you just go back 4 or 5 years, you've seen how the compliance landscape has changed with GDPR coming in 2018. It's 5 years now already, but 5 years later, there's lots of privacy frameworks around the world. So you need a solution and a partner that will meet you worldwide. It'll be really sad if we had to pick a partner where you could do it only in the US, but in order to do something in APAC or in Europe, you had to go do it all over again with someone else. So building that building that partnership with someone who already understands that is super critical. So that's all I would say in closing.
Thank you, Chris. I do want to share, just for everybody in here, the QR code that we do have up here. We did do a technical validation with Enterprise Strategy Group, so please do take an opportunity to take a snapshot of that QR code. We hope that will be a valuable asset, and we drill into it goes into some great detail beyond even what we talked about today on the stage. I'd like to thank Chris, thank you very much, and Jeannie and Matt for joining me up here, and hopefully, we were able to explore a conversation. I know each of these are partners up here, but they ultimately, as I kicked it off, are customers, just like each of you, they, hopefully some of these decisions that they made to choose Google Cloud are going to be valuable for each of you in either choosing cloud or expanding on, the technology innovations that you're leveraging. So thank you very much for coming to Next, and appreciate the time, and I hope everyone enjoys the next party today. Take care.
Thank you.